to the war in Gaza, now into what appears to be a direct assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh's three sons in Gaza via military airstrikes. The IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Forces, claimed in a statement that the Hamas military operatives were on their way to carry out terrorist activities in the central area of the Gaza Strip when the strike happened. It did not mention that they were Ismail Haniyeh's children or his grandchildren or the number of people who were killed in the attack. Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, confirmed the killing of his children, Hazem, Amir, and Muhammad, along with a number of his grandchildren on Wednesday. In an interview with Al Jazeera Arabic, local news reported that at least 3 grandchildren of the Hamas leader were killed in the attack. Haniyeh said they were targeted as they were visiting relatives for Eid at Shati refugee camp. He said, "Through the blood of the martyrs and the pain of the injured, we create hope, we create a future, we create independence and freedom for our people and our nation," adding that around 60 members of his family, including nieces and nephews, have been killed since the start of the war. Now, early on Wednesday, Haniyeh said the attack on his family is evidence of Israel's failure as it continues to face Palestinian fighters in Gaza, adding that the killings will not change Hamas' position in ongoing indirect ceasefire talks. A week after the attack on aid workers with the World Central Kitchen, the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund, that is, says one of its vehicles was hit by live ammunition on Wednesday. It happened while the convoy was waiting to enter northern Gaza from the south of the territory. Though UNICEF has not elaborated on the damage, it said in a statement it had raised the incident with relevant Israeli authorities and called for the protection of humanitarian aid workers as they continue to face risks delivering life-saving supplies. In the meantime, Israel says it is planning to flood Gaza with aid through a new land crossing and a port from Israel to northern Gaza. According to the IDF, the new northern crossing will enable more aid to flow to civilians in the areas that have been challenging for trucks to access. The United Nations and other humanitarian agencies have reported a catastrophic humanitarian situation in northern Gaza, where the threat of famine is imminent due to a lack of aid deliveries. The report of a new crossing comes as Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant promised to streamline security checks that aid organizations have blamed for choking the flow of assistance to the territory. And in addition to promises in the Middle East conflict, President Joe Biden of the United States has promised Israel ironclad support amid fears that Iran could launch a retaliatory attack on its territory. President Biden warned Iran is threatening to launch a significant attack following Israel's airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. On Wednesday, the Iran leader Ali Khamenei said the Israeli attack in Damascus was equivalent to an attack on Israel itself. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in the same vein, assured Israel of U.S. support against any threat by Iran and its proxies. Mr. Blinken made the comments during a phone call with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. According to the State Department, both parties also discussed efforts to secure the release of all captives held in Gaza. Let's bring in the VOA's Linda Gradstein in Jerusalem. Linda, great to see you. Let's begin with the IDF admitting it killed Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh's sons in Gaza. Haniyeh says it's a sign of Israel's failure in the war, but the Israeli army says this attack was on Hamas militants. Are they expecting some backlash now from Hamas following this incident?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any backlash because Israel and Hamas are fighting a war. In other words, Hamas is already trying to hit Israeli soldiers whenever they can, wherever they can. So I don't think there'll be backlash. What this has done, though, is strengthened Ismail Haniyeh. While his children, he has 13 children, and they live in Gaza in the Shati refugee camp. He himself has been living in Doha in Qatar. He is the political leader of Hamas as opposed to the military leader. And there's been a lot of criticism that while the people of Gaza are suffering, he and other political leaders of Hamas are living in fancy hotels and, having a very good life. So I think this will strengthen his position within the organization. But I don't think it's going to cause a direct backlash from Hamas because Hamas is already doing whatever it can to attack Israel and Israeli soldiers.
Yeah, and apparently there have been other killings in airstrikes of top Hamas commanders and leaders is still in Gaza. Could we say that Israel is hitting its targets now and could possibly be winning this war?
Well, Israel has said since the beginning that it has two goals. The first is to free the hostages, and the second is to make sure that Hamas can no longer have military capability to hit Israel. And Israel says it has killed at least 13,000 Hamas fighters, including dozens of senior Hamas leaders. At the same time, the two most senior leaders, Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif, as far as Israel knows, have not been killed. They're believed to be hiding in the tunnels below Rafah, the southern Gaza City, where Israel has said, we talked about this yesterday, that Israel is going to go into Rafah and has ordered 40,000 tents to move the civilian population, while President Biden has warned Israel against that operation.
But doesn't this complicate the release of the hostages? There's still hope that these could be released, but now that Haniyeh's children have been killed in this attack and possibly grandchildren as well, doesn't the Israeli government think that this complicates the negotiations ongoing?
So there are really two schools of thought on this. Some people think it could complicate it and it could make Hamas dig more intensely into its positions. Other Israelis, those who are associated with Netanyahu's, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's government, say that only by pressuring Hamas will they agree to release the hostages, and that perhaps killing Haniyeh's children will cause pressure on Hamas, which would try to, prevent any more killings. So it's hard to tell if it will have a direct effect on the hostage negotiations. My sense is that it won't, but the negotiations are already quite complicated.
Let's talk about another attack now by the IDF, this time on UNICEF workers in Israel. It comes at least 2 weeks since the attack on the WCK aid workers. Israel admitted the attack was a mistake. That's the one with the WCK. How does it explain this one against the UNICEF?
Well, the only thing the Army has said so far is that it is investigating what happened. UNICEF said that it was a convoy bringing aid to northern Gaza, which has been the hardest hit by the famine. And when Israeli troops opened fire with automatic weapons, at least one UNICEF worker is believed to have been killed. And UNICEF said it had coordinated the route with the IDF before it set out. So it's really not clear what happened. Although, it could be that it was a mistake. That's what seems to be the most likely at this point. But Israel has not yet issued an official statement about what happened. It did investigate the WCK killing and apologized and said that it was simply a mistake. So
no word yet on investigations for this one. It does seem the American government, however, has pardoned Israel for one of its nationals who was killed in the WCK attack, the U.S.-Canadian health worker. Now they're providing undivided support to Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden announcing that against Iran. This war does appear to be expanding, Linda. Do Israelis think that the IDF could be fighting a much bigger conflict in the Middle East?
Well, about 10 days ago, Israel launched strikes that killed a bunch of Iranian generals in Damascus, including the most senior. And that's what Iran is threatening to retaliate for. Israelis, I think, are not panicking. Some people are buying generators. The one sort of indication is, while the kids today began a 2.5 week Passover vacation for the Jewish holiday of Passover, which is in another 10 days. They told all the kids to bring their books home because if there is then schools would move to Zoom like we had during COVID. So it means that the government is preparing for that possibility. Some Israelis have been buying generators and stocking up on food, but there doesn't seem to be a panic. I mean, there's two possibilities. One is that Iran will attack directly from Iran. And in that case, Israel has said that it will retaliate against Iran directly. The other case, which seems to be more likely, is that it would use one of its proxies, either Hamas or Hezbollah, at an attack. And there have already been an increase over the past couple of weeks in Iranian cyber attacks.
I know you have to go, Linda, but just to ask about, the new land crossing that's been planned by the Israeli government. Any idea where this will be located and when it will be ready?
I'm sorry, I just missed it. You dropped out for a moment. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, the new land crossing announced by the Israeli government.
Yes.
Any idea where this will be located and when it will be ready?
So apparently it will be ready quite soon, like in the next few days, and it will be somewhere in the north of Gaza. There already is a crossing, the Erez crossing point, which has been closed since the beginning of the war. But at the same time, that crossing point is very close to a major highway in Israel, and demonstrators have been trying to block the aid. Demonstrators in Israel who feel that Israel should not be providing humanitarian aid to Gaza. They say that the population in Gaza elected Hamas and they are responsible for what's happening. So it will be somewhere in the north of Gaza, although Israel has not announced where, and it's expected to begin working in the next few days. The Israeli defense minister said that the goal is to flood Gaza with humanitarian aid. And I think there's a sense that the Biden administration was getting very frustrated with Israel. Israel does not want to endanger its ties with the United States and world opinion, all of those things, the attack on the world kitchen workers that we talked about. So there has been sort of a decision in Israel that to increase the amount of humanitarian aid dramatically that's getting into Gaza.
Thanks again, Linda. We'll leave you now to drive safe on to your next destination. Thanks again.
Thank you.